My name is Jim Boatman. I'm here with Alfie Oakes of Oakes Farms. How many employees does Oakes Farm currently have?
We have 2,300 employees.
To your knowledge, have you had any deaths associated with
We've had,
any Oakes employee?
we've emphatically had zero deaths with any of our Oakes Farms employees, and that's another hoax that has been you know in the media with two different media outlets reported, because I was the one that came out saying that this COVID-19 reaction is a hoax. They've kind of been foaming at the mouth to be able to come over, to come and say to me that, oh, one of your Oakes Farms employees died. One of the most this particular story that ran actually a week ago today on Fox 4 is one of the most disgraceful pieces of journalism that I've ever seen. There's Patrick Nolan from Fox 4 News came out and had a reporter recording a statement from a gentleman that said that he had a friend that died. He actually took to the hospital. They didn't get an ambulance because they couldn't afford an ambulance, and he took this friend to the hospital that ultimately died of COVID-19. Now, the way that Fox 4 reported it was that this gentleman that was speaking and the gentleman that did die of apparent COVID-19 virus worked at our Oakes Farms. It's clearly what it said in the news article there. The facts of that are 100% different. It could not be more different. The way the conversation really went was the reporter called the gentleman and he asked if he worked at Oakes Farms, and he said no. Had he ever worked at Oakes Farms? And the gentleman said no. And he said, did his friend that had ultimately passed away ever work at Oakes Farms? And he said no. In fact, this gentleman proceeded to tell him where they did work. He said that for the last 3 years that both of those gentlemen worked at, and in fact, the gentleman that ultimately deceased, when he drove him to the hospital, the only ID that the gentleman had was a ID. So at that point, the reporter started asking this gentleman other questions. Well, have you ever been to the, even though you haven't worked there, have you ever been to the Oakes Farms location? And he said no. And he asked the gentleman, well, do you have any friends that work for Oakes Farms? And he said yes. And he asked the friend's name. And then he started to tell him what they did there. And at that point, he took that snippet and used it to fabricate a story. I mean, the exact definition of a hoax. We now have a sworn deposition from this gentleman that says, under oath, saying that absolutely that when he talked to Fox 4, that he told them exactly the things that, as I just said to you. Even more egregious is he had a call from that news agency offering him $50,000 to report, of how this gentleman would have died at Oakes Farm.
So, do you have any information about anybody, like any individual external to the media, external to your business, prompting the media to undertake a certain story or approach to information that may have not been exactly truthful?
Absolutely. So, so there's Seth Holmes is a doctor and actually also a news reporter for the original. This has been about maybe 3 weeks ago. They come up with a false news story, whereas they reported the same gentleman supposedly dying at Oakes Farms from COVID-19, and but in his report, he used a pseudonym. He would not actually, put the real person's name in because there wasn't a person, and we sued him to tell him that he either had to that he was either going to have to retract that statement or produce the name with some facts, and he couldn't do that, and then. It was, about 2 weeks later where Fox 4 came out with this, in conjunction, believe it or not, with Chris Knutson, the one of the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement in Southwest Florida here. Chris and Seth both basically got with Fox 4 News and collaborated to to create this hoax, or to
Now, are you speculating that happened, or do you have information
not at all. I mean, it's actually on the. You can see that on that one particular Fox 4 post that both people are on there. You have the mention of Seth Holmes, and then you have Chris Knutson on there, that really has only represented Black Lives Matter, but he decided to jump in on the COVID-19 as well, because it helped him in his effort to try to destroy our business, because we decided to take a different stance on what we believe that the Black Lives Matter movement means or is doing to our country.
So with regard to what happened with Fox News, how can people support you?
Well, there's a couple ways. The most effective way would be to reach out to Fox 4 and ask them why they're picking a side, and then just coming up with complete lies to try to damage a business. I think that if a lot of people would reach out and just let Fox 4 News that they're not interested in completely false news, things that are total lies. Other thing would be to turn your channel, of course, but we're seeing a lot of the channels are doing very similar things. But I've been on every single news station. Fox 4 has been the absolute worst at basically through this whole ordeal, with maybe 15 different times being reported. They've done the very worst job of getting the truth out. They've actually went completely the opposite way and created outright lies and then reported them as truth. Again, back to the meaning of a hoax.